It started with a garden, a small, quiet plot behind the cottage on Hawthorne Lane, where Olivia's mother used to kneel every morning, humming softly while her fingers brushed dew from the rose petals. That same garden now sat overgrown, weeds coiling up like secrets left untold. Olivia never intended to come back to Hawthorne Lane. But 3 weeks ago, she stood in a probate court, stunned into silence as her mother's will was read aloud. To my daughter Olivia, I leave my jewelry, her father's old watch, and my love always. To my son David, I leave the house at 112 Hawthorne Lane. The house, their house, the very place Olivia had spent every summer since she was 5. The place where she had cared for their mother in the last 2 years when David couldn't get away from work. The place she had paid the property taxes on when things got tight and their mother's pension had stopped covering the bills. But now, on paper, it belonged to David. Is this a mistake? She had asked the lawyer, her voice dry. The lawyer shook his head, eyes darting downward. I'm afraid this is what she signed. I have the deed. It was transferred to David's name a month before she passed. Olivia's heart twisted. A month before her mother died, she was barely lucid, whispering half-formed thoughts, sometimes not recognizing her own reflection. The idea that she had sat and signed away the house. It didn't make sense. Unless someone else had guided her hand. David didn't even show up to the will reading. He sent a courier to collect the papers. But 3 days later, he texted Olivia. Hey, just wanted to give you a heads up. I'm listing the cottage next week. Realtor's coming Monday. She didn't respond. She just got in her car and drove. And now, here she was, standing on the creaking porch of the cottage with her mother's old garden gloves still hanging by the back door, staring at the windows she used to help wash each spring. The key still worked. She stepped inside. The air held a tired, familiar scent, lavender and dust. Olivia wandered into the kitchen, her fingertips trailing across the counter. She remembered the years she'd spent in that very room, wiping dishes, icing birthday cakes, nursing tea after a long night of arguments with her ex-husband. This place was stitched into her bones. And David thought he could just list it like it was a commodity? Her phone buzzed again. Another message from David. Also, if you're still keeping anything there, please remove it. Potential buyers don't want clutter. Thanks. Clutter. She was clutter now. That night, Olivia opened a bottle of red from the old wine shelf her mother kept above the fridge and sat at the dining room table, still laid with the crocheted runner her grandmother made. Her fingers moved slowly over the wineglass rim, thoughts racing. Something didn't add up. Her mother hadn't even been capable of feeding herself without assistance the last month. There's no way she willingly and knowingly signed a property transfer, unless she was coerced or forged. Olivia wasn't a lawyer, but she had learned enough through life's brutal chapters to know when something smelled wrong. And this reeked of betrayal. She got up and began searching through the drawers in the study, old receipts, postcards from family, stacks of medical bills. Then she found it, an envelope marked Olivia in her mother's elegant, slanted handwriting. Her breath caught. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a folded letter, and the words made her knees buckle. My dearest girl, if you're reading this, then something has gone very wrong. Olivia read the letter 3 times, each word pressing heavier on her chest than the last. My dearest girl, if you're reading this, then something has gone very wrong. I wanted to leave you the house. I told the notary that. I told your brother that. But I fear things were changed after I signed. I don't trust David anymore. He's been whispering things, bringing people over when I don't feel well, trying to confuse me. I don't know how to fight back. Please forgive me if this letter finds you too late. Mom! The paper trembled in her fingers. Her mother had known. Not just about David's manipulation, but about what it would do to Olivia. And still, she had tried. She had tried to reach her daughter, even when her own clarity was fading like the last rays of summer sun. Tears prickled in the corners of Olivia's eyes. She folded the letter carefully and slipped it into the inner pocket of her jacket. It wasn't just a house anymore. It was a lie, a theft, a betrayal woven into the bloodline. The next morning, Olivia stood in front of the filing cabinet in the back of the study. Her mother used to keep all the important documents there: wills, titles, medical records, even old birthday cards from Olivia's childhood. She unlocked the drawer with the tiny brass key hanging from the ribbon on the desk lamp. Inside were stacks of papers bundled by twine, bills, letters, a few folders labeled in her mother's handwriting. And there it was: property transfer, 112 Hawthorne Lane. The date jumped off the page, August 16th. Olivia's stomach dropped. She remembered that day. Her mother had been in and out of consciousness, barely able to lift a spoon to her mouth. Olivia had fed her mashed sweet potatoes and begged her to drink water. There was no way she had lucidly signed legal documents that afternoon. She stared harder. The signature on the bottom, her mother's name, was neat. Too neat. The strokes fluid even. Identical to how her mother used to sign things years ago, not with the shaky hand she'd had the last year. Her mother didn't sign this. Someone forged it. Olivia drove to the county clerk's office downtown with the letter and the transfer copy in her purse. The woman behind the plexiglass barrier glanced at the document and raised a brow. "That's notarized," she said, tapping the corner with a manicured nail. "Who notarized it?" Olivia asked. The woman scanned the page. "That'd be Ruth Ann Brenner. She logs through us." "Can I get a copy of her record from that date?" The woman hesitated, then nodded. "Hang on." Olivia waited, anxiety crawling under her skin like ants. The woman returned 10 minutes later with a printed sheet. "She notarized 5 things that day. This one was recorded at 10:42 a.m. That was impossible. Olivia had been at the house that entire morning. No one had visited, no notary, no legal assistant, no witness. She blinked. Did she file this notarization in person? The woman looked over the record. Actually, no. Says remote notarization, signed affidavit. Remote, meaning anyone could have sent the document in. Her heart pounded. David had access to all their mother's IDs, even her signature stamp from years ago. He had motive, and now it looked like he had means. That night, Olivia drove back to the cottage. A silver SUV was parked in the gravel driveway. David. He was standing on the front porch, arms crossed, wearing a polo shirt and that smug, effortless grin he always used when he thought he was holding all the cards. "Didn't expect you to come crawling back here," he said. Olivia got out of the car slowly, her face unreadable. "You forged Mom's signature." His smile twitched. "Careful, Liv. That's a big accusation." "I have the letter. I have the notary log. You slipped that deed through using a stamp or a forged form, probably when she was too sick to argue. You didn't think I'd come back, but I did." David stepped down from the porch. "You really think you can take this from me?" "It was never yours to take." He leaned closer, the smugness draining from his eyes. "You always had to be the saint, didn't you? The good daughter, the martyr. You think taking care of her makes you noble? I paid her hospital bills when you were too broke to help. I paid the taxes. I slept on a cot by her bed. I buried her, David." Silence. "You're not going to win this," he said coldly. Olivia stared him down. "We'll see." She waited until he left before locking the door behind her, and then she picked up the phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in years. "Hello?" came the voice on the other end. "Alex, it's Olivia. I need your help." There was a long pause. "Liv, it's been, 10 years?" "I know, but I need a lawyer." Alex Grant had always been a quiet storm, calm voice, sharp mind, and a stare that could melt through granite. Olivia remembered falling in love with that stare once. She also remembered the day she left him without saying goodbye. 10 years and 1 broken engagement later, here she was, sitting across from him at a coffee shop on Riverbend Avenue, his black coat still damp from the rain, her fingers wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched. He looked at her for a long moment, reading her. "You look tired," he said softly. She offered a breathless laugh. "I am." Alex leaned back, hands folded. "Tell me everything." And she did. The will, the letter, the suspicious deed transfer, David's sudden interest in the house he hadn't stepped foot in for years, the notary record, the forged signature. Every word felt like she was dragging truth through molasses, thick and slow and heavy on the soul. By the time she finished, Alex looked as if he'd aged 10 years in 20 minutes. "I'm not sure if this is about greed or something else," Olivia whispered, "but I can't let him erase everything. Not after what I gave up to be there for her." Alex nodded slowly. "Do you have a copy of the original will? Before this deed transfer happened?" She reached into her bag and handed him the crumpled photocopy. He scanned it, his lawyer's eyes narrowing. "This," he said, tapping the paper, "and the timing of the notary log. You have the beginnings of a fraud case. If your mother wasn't competent at the time of signing, and if we can prove this document was submitted remotely without proper verification, David could be in serious trouble." Olivia bit her lip. "Can we prove that?" Alex leaned forward. "We'll find out. But first I need you to understand. This won't just be a court battle. It'll get ugly. He'll lie. He'll drag your name. Are you ready for that?" She hesitated, then nodded. "I've lived quiet too long, Alex. I let people take things from me because I didn't want to be the problem. But this time, I'm not backing down." For a second, Alex's expression softened. "You always had fire in you. You just forgot." Later that night, Olivia walked the empty halls of the cottage. The floorboards creaked beneath her bare feet, and outside the window, the wind stirred the branches like restless ghosts. She stood at her mother's old writing desk, where the lamp still glowed faintly. A soft stack of envelopes was tucked inside, her mother's unmailed letters. She flipped through them, looking for clues, until she came upon one addressed to the title office, urgent. It was sealed but never sent. Curious, she opened it. Inside was a typed letter, brief but clear. "I, Marie Holloway, wish to rescind any property transfer made under duress or while not of sound mind. I did not intend to sign over the deed to David Holloway and request this matter be reviewed formally." Olivia's hands shook. This was a smoking gun. Her mother had tried, she had known, and someone, most likely David, intercepted this letter before it left the house. That night, Olivia didn't sleep. She made copies of everything: the will, the forged deed, the notary records, the unmailed letter, her mother's handwritten note. She was building a case, brick by brick. But David wasn't one to go down quietly. 3 days later, Olivia arrived at the cottage to find a red notice stapled to the front door. "Notice to vacate. Property under contract." Her breath caught. Below, in bold, "Failure to remove personal belongings within 72 hours may result in legal action." Rage surged through her. David was trying to force her out before she could finish her investigation. She stormed to the porch, yanked the paper off, and took a photo. Then she marched inside and started pulling out her mother's boxes, documenting everything, snapping photos of family heirlooms, receipts, photos. Her phone buzzed again, a voicemail from an unknown number. She played it on speaker. "You need to stop. This isn't worth dragging the family name through court. Take the jewelry, take whatever you want. Just let it go. You think you're fighting for justice, but all you're doing is digging up dirt that should stay buried." The voice was muffled, disguised, but unmistakably David. Olivia stared out the kitchen window, jaw tight. He was panicking, and panic made people sloppy. The next morning, Alex called. "I pulled Ruth Ann Brenner's notary license history. She was investigated once before for improper remote notarizations. Her record was clean afterward, but that gives us a pattern," Olivia finished, hopeful. He paused. "Yes, but there's more. I traced the deed transfer file, the IP address that submitted the digital form. It's registered to David's office computer at Holloway Realty." She blinked. "He used his work login?" Alex exhaled a quiet laugh. Arrogance is a lawyer's best friend. Olivia leaned against the wall, a weight lifting off her chest for the first time in weeks. "I'm going to stop him," she whispered. Alex's voice dropped, steady and sure. "We're going to stop him. I've already drafted an injunction to freeze the sale. We file first thing Monday. Olivia closed her eyes, letting the moment soak in. She imagined her mother's voice, her laugh, the warmth of the garden in spring. The court hearing was scheduled for Friday. It was Monday morning when Olivia stood once more in the garden behind the cottage, wearing her mother's sun hat, clutching a copy of the injunction that Alex had filed just hours earlier. The ground was still damp from last night's rain, and a single rose, wild and stubborn, had bloomed through the weeds by the back fence. That fence used to be white. Her mother repainted it every April, calling it a fresh start. Olivia crouched and brushed the petals gently. It was the first time in weeks she didn't feel like a ghost in her own story. She whispered to the flower, "It's happening, Mom. We're not letting him erase you." A car door slammed in the front driveway. Olivia straightened and walked around the house, her boots slick with mud. David was there again, standing beside a woman in a red blazer and heels far too expensive for gravel. His realtor, no doubt. When he saw Olivia, his jaw tensed. "What are you doing here?" he snapped. "You had 72 hours. That was up yesterday." "I filed an injunction," Olivia said coolly. "Filed, stamped, and received. The sale is frozen pending legal review. You're not selling anything." The realtor blinked. "David, is that true?" David's voice was ice. "It's a bluff." Olivia stepped forward, pulling the official copy from her folder like a weapon. "Here, you might want to read it, and so might she, before she attaches her name to a fraudulent property transfer." The woman's face turned pale. "Fraudulent?" David shot Olivia a glare that could have sliced marble, but she didn't flinch. "I'll wait in the car," the realtor muttered, heels clicking awkwardly back toward the driveway. David turned on her the moment they were alone. "You think you're so clever, don't you? Little Olivia, always playing victim, always crawling back." She stared at him. Number not anymore. "I did what had to be done," he growled. "She was losing her mind, Liv. You don't know the things she said when you weren't around." Olivia's hands curled into fists. "You mean the things you told her to say?" He said nothing. She stepped closer. "You didn't just take a house, David. You took her voice in her final weeks. You turned her fear into leverage, and now you're going to lose. You don't want to do this." "I need to." That night, Olivia returned to her apartment with files spread across her coffee table, and her laptop blinking with messages from Alex. Depositions were being scheduled. The notary would be subpoenaed. And a forensic handwriting analyst was reviewing the signature on the deed. It was all moving fast now, but the victory felt fragile, like one loud noise might shatter it all. She curled into the couch, sipping tea, thinking of her mother's laugh again, the woman who used to dance barefoot in the kitchen when the radio played old jazz, the woman who taught Olivia how to sew, how to cry without shame, how to forgive, but not forget. Her phone buzzed. A new message. Unknown number. "You really want to do this? You think court is your playground? You don't know what I have, Liv. You don't know anything." She stared at the screen, pulse rising. Another message came in. "Let's see how your pretty little case holds up after the truth gets out." Olivia saved the number. She forwarded the messages to Alex. Then she sat there, staring into the quiet, a voice in her head whispering, "What truth?" The next morning, Alex showed up at her door. His face was grim. "We have a problem," he said. Olivia's heart sank. "What is it?" "David's attorney filed a counter motion. He's claiming you coerced your mother to write that letter you found. He's saying it was part of an emotional manipulation campaign, that you fabricated that rescission letter to block the deed transfer." Olivia felt like the floor was slipping beneath her. "What?" "He submitted old emails, conversations you had with your mother during her hospice care, selectively edited. It paints a picture of you being persuasive." Her chest ached. "So now I'm the manipulator?" Alex put a hand on her shoulder. "We'll counter it. We'll subpoena her care nurse. Anyone who saw the condition she was in. We'll get expert testimony." But live? What? He hesitated. There's something else. She waited. Alex pulled out a document and handed it to her. A second will, dated just 1 week before her mother died. This one only mentioned David. This wasn't filed, he said, voice tight. And I'm not convinced it's real. But if David's team gets this admitted, we're in deeper than we thought. Olivia clutched the paper, staring at her mother's signature. There was something off about it. And suddenly, she remembered something. The signature stamp. The one her mother had locked away in her sewing chest. Olivia drove back to the cottage that night alone. The porch was silent. The garden was still. She slipped into the guest bedroom, the one her mother had once used as her sewing room. She knelt before the old cedar chest and turned the key, the hinges groaning as it opened. Spools of thread, fabric scraps, a photo of Olivia as a girl, grinning in a yellow sundress, and tucked beneath it all, a velvet pouch. Inside, the stamp. Unused, clean, untouched. Her mother hadn't signed that second will either. She had never seen it. Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, holding the pouch in her lap. David had forged 2 documents. This wasn't just desperation, it was a campaign. A careful, greedy orchestration. She stared out the window, heart beating hard, as rain began to fall over the garden she had once planted with her mother. And she whispered, not to herself, but to the memory of the woman who had always believed in her. I'm not stopping. The courthouse smelled like old books and faint lemon polish, the kind Olivia associated with funeral homes and forgotten libraries. She sat beside Alex in a narrow hallway, her heels clicking nervously against the tile floor as attorneys passed by, nodding in tight-lipped formality. Her hands gripped a leather folder filled with documents, the notarization logs, the forensic handwriting report, the unmailed letter her mother had written, and now photos of the unused signature stamp from the sewing chest. She had evidence, but she also had a brother who knew how to twist the truth into a story that sounded just believable enough to cause damage. Alex was reviewing his notes when Olivia noticed someone approaching down the hall. David. He walked with his attorney, a tall man in an expensive gray suit, like they were royalty striding into battle. David's eyes met Olivia's for a moment, and a smirk curled on his lips. I see you still enjoy theatrics, he said as he passed her. She didn't answer, but Alex stood, smoothing his tie. That wasn't a smart move, he said quietly once they were gone. Olivia turned to him. What do you mean? Taunting the person suing you for fraud in a courthouse? Judges don't like that. It's not illegal, but it is stupid. The hearing began mid-morning. It was a preliminary injunction hearing, not the full trial, but crucial nonetheless. If the judge ruled in Olivia's favor, the property sale would remain frozen, and David wouldn't be able to offload the house while the fraud claims were investigated. Alex presented the case with methodical grace, laying out the timeline. Marie Holloway's documented cognitive decline in the final months. The suspicious timing of the property deed transfer. The fact that David initiated a remote notarization without a verified witness present. The signature inconsistencies confirmed by a handwriting expert. And finally, the unused signature stamp, proving the second will David submitted was likely forged using digital means. But the courtroom shifted when Olivia took the stand. Her voice was calm at first, recounting the final days with her mother, how she changed her sheets, combed her hair, helped her eat, held her hand through the fevered nights. Then came the letter, and the rescindment form, and the quiet heartbreak. I didn't want this to be about money, she said, her voice trembling. I just didn't want her silenced. David's attorney objected to the emotional appeal. The judge allowed it. And then it was David's turn. He strutted to the stand like a man who thought he still held all the cards. My mother was scared, he said, voice smooth, carefully modulated. Olivia made her feel like a burden. She convinced her she was going crazy so she could control the estate. Gasps rippled faintly from the gallery. David's attorney handed over screenshots of emails, heavily redacted, presented without full threads. trying to show that Olivia had referred to her mother as confused, fragile, dependent. But Alex was ready. He stood and asked calmly, "Can you read the rest of the sentence, Mr. Holloway? The part that follows fragile?" David frowned, then looked down. Alex approached the bench and read it himself. "Mom's getting fragile. I'm going to take the next week off work so I can stay with her full time." Olivia looked down, tears welling. The courtroom fell into a hush. David paled. After the hearing, the judge retired for review. Everyone was told the decision would come in the next 24 hours. Outside the courthouse, the rain had returned, a slow, steady drizzle soaking the stone steps. Olivia stood with Alex beneath the overhang, staring out as the clouds pressed low against the horizon. "You did good," Alex said softly. She gave him a tired smile. "You think we'll win?" "We have the law. He has ego. That's a decent balance." Olivia nodded, eyes lingering on a couple walking arm in arm across the square. "I hate that it came to this. You didn't choose this war, but you did choose to fight." She was silent for a while. "He used to be kind to me. When we were kids, he protected me. Sometimes the worst betrayals come from the people we trusted most." That evening, Olivia drove back to the cottage for what she thought would be a quiet night of waiting. But the door was unlocked. She froze in the entryway. A drawer in the kitchen was left open. One of the frames on the living room wall lay shattered on the floor. Her mother's music box, the one that only played if you wound it just right, was gone. She rushed upstairs. The sewing chest had been opened, rifled through. The stamp, gone. The pouch was still there, but empty. She stood there, heart thudding. David had broken in. He was panicking, and if he had the stamp now, he could create even more forgeries, rewrite history entirely. She picked up her phone and called Alex. Voicemail. She tried again. Voicemail. She turned and grabbed her car keys, ready to drive to his apartment, when she saw something new sitting on the counter. A printed photograph of Olivia, sleeping in the cottage's armchair, and scrawled across the bottom in black marker, "Back off, or next time it's not just paper I come for." Her breath caught in her throat. David wasn't just playing dirty anymore. He was escalating. 2 days after the break-in, Olivia was granted a protective order. David denied everything, claimed he was out of town that night. His lawyer barked about fabricated threats and manufactured fear tactics. But the photo spoke for itself, and the judge didn't like being lied to. Still, the damage had been done. The stamp was gone, and Olivia knew her brother was desperate enough to fabricate more. So she did something he didn't expect. She invited the press. The local paper had once published her mother's gardening column. Olivia reached out to the editor, gave her the story, and backed every word with documents, photographs, emails, sworn statements from the nurse, and the letter her mother had written in trembling ink. The story ran under the headline, "Daughter Battles Forgery and Fraud in Fight for Late Mother's Home. A Family Torn Apart by a Signature." Within hours, it was picked up by 3 local news stations. Neighbors sent flowers to the cottage gate. A local elder care nonprofit reached out to offer support. People began talking, not just about Olivia, but about how easily a vulnerable elder's voice could be erased. David called that night. She let it ring. The final court hearing arrived one gray Thursday in March. Olivia stood at the front of the courtroom with Alex beside her. She wore her mother's pearl earrings and a quiet fire in her chest. David sat across the aisle, shoulders hunched, jaw tight. His expensive suit didn't hide the unraveling. Alex began the closing statement with calm precision, laying out not only the evidence but the pattern, the rushed transfer, the remote notarization from David's office, the sudden appearance of a second will, and the retaliatory break-in meant to intimidate Olivia into silence. Then, Olivia stood for her own final words. "My mother gave her life to that house," she said softly. "She raised us there. She taught me how to plant bulbs under frost, how to spot a storm before the clouds moved in. And she taught me to stand when something was wrong, even if your knees are shaking, even if it's your own family." She turned slightly, her gaze locking on David. "She trusted me to be her voice when she couldn't speak. That's what I'm doing. and I'll keep doing it until no one else's mother gets erased on paper. The judge took a full 10 minutes before returning to deliver the decision. But when he did, the words dropped like thunder. The court finds that the property transfer was executed under fraudulent circumstances. The deed is voided. The second will is inadmissible. Full ownership of 112 Hawthorne Lane is awarded to Olivia Holloway. Olivia let out a breath that felt like years of silence leaving her lungs. David didn't speak. He didn't even look at her. He stood and walked out of the courtroom without a word, his lawyer following, their whispered argument echoing down the marble hallway. 3 weeks later, Olivia stood in the backyard garden, the sun warming her shoulders as she knelt to plant fresh hydrangeas along the fence line. She'd begun repainting it that morning, white, just like her mother used to do every April. The house was hers again, not just on paper, in soul. The community had rallied around her since the ruling. Strangers dropped by with flowers and old photos of her mother. Volunteers helped her repair the roof. The local news followed up with a story titled, "Justice at Hawthorne Lane, Daughter Restores Legacy After Legal War." She saved the clipping and tucked it into the velvet pouch where the stamp used to be. As the sun dipped low, she sat on the back steps, sipping warm tea from the mug her mother once used every morning. A small breeze stirred the wind chimes above the door, their song delicate and clear. Alex arrived just before dusk, holding a tray of lemon bars and 2 beers. "Did you finally get your garden back?" he asked. She smiled. "Number I got her garden back." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sky turn peach and gold, the wind rustling through fresh leaves like her mother whispering, "You did good, baby. You did good." Then Olivia turned to him. "Thank you for believing me." Alex's voice was quiet. "I never stopped." She reached out and held his hand. Not for comfort, but in peace, in victory, in return, the end.